In the summer of 1967, the most prestigious martial arts gym in Los Angeles was about to witness a confrontation that would be etched into the memory of everyone present. Joe Louis, the national karate champion with an impeccable record of 32 consecutive victories, had just made a statement that would echo throughout the martial arts circuit. He was faster than Bruce Lee. Louis's arrogance was not unfounded. Standing 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighing 210 pounds of pure muscle, he had demolished every opponent who dared to face him. His fists moved like lightning, and his side kick had knocked out more than a dozen competitors. But what was about to happen that afternoon would change not only his perspective on martial arts, but his entire life. If you want to discover how this legendary encounter ended, and learn the lesson that forever changed one of the most arrogant fighters of his era, stay until the end of this story. You won't regret it. It all began 3 weeks earlier during an interview for a specialized martial arts magazine. The journalist asked Louis what he thought about Bruce Lee, the Chinese instructor who was gaining fame in Hollywood for his revolutionary demonstrations. Louis, wearing a mocking smile, answered bluntly, "Bruce Lee is nothing more than a showman," he declared as he leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed over his chest. "He does flashy tricks for the cameras, but in a real fight my speed and power would crush him in less than 30 seconds. I've faced the best fighters in the country, and none of them lasted more than 2 minutes with me." Louis's words spread like wildfire throughout the martial arts community. At that time, Bruce Lee was not yet the film legend the world would later know. He was simply an instructor with revolutionary ideas about combat, a man who had begun questioning traditional forms and developing his own system, Jeet Kune Do. When Louis's statements reached Bruce Lee, he did not show anger. Instead, he smiled with that characteristic calm that unsettled those who knew him. He was giving a private lesson in his small Chinatown gym when one of his students showed him the magazine article. "Master, are you going to respond to this?" the student asked, expecting anger or indignation. Bruce carefully folded the magazine and placed it on a table. His dark eyes shone with a mix of amusement and determination. "I don't need to respond with words," he said simply. "Words are wind. Truth is proven through actions." That same afternoon, Bruce did something unexpected. He picked up the phone and called the gym where Joe Louis trained. The conversation was brief, but meaningful. Bruce wasn't calling to challenge or insult him. Instead, he made an invitation that left the karate champion perplexed. "I've heard you're the best," Bruce said in a polite but firm tone. "I'd like you to come to my gym this Saturday afternoon, not to fight, but to train together. I believe we could both learn something from each other. What do you say?" Caught off guard, Louis felt his ego swell even more. He interpreted the invitation as an admission of inferiority, as if Bruce Lee were seeking his approval or acknowledging his superiority. Without a second thought, he accepted. In his mind, this would be the perfect opportunity to publicly prove that Bruce Lee was all smoke and no fire. Saturday arrived with the stifling heat typical of the California summer. Bruce Lee's gym was modest, located on the second floor of an old building in the heart of Chinatown. There was no luxurious equipment or shiny mirrors like in large commercial gyms, just an open space with wooden floors, a few heavy bags, and basic training equipment. When Joe Louis entered, accompanied by 3 of his most loyal students, his expression radiated absolute confidence. He wore a traditional karate gi, perfectly white and starched, with his black belt impeccably tied. Every movement conveyed power and dominance, the perfect image of an undefeated champion. Bruce Lee awaited him at the center of the gym, wearing simple black pants and barefoot. His bare torso revealed compact, defined musculature, very different from Louis's massive bulk. Around them stood about 15 people, Bruce's students, some local instructors, and curious onlookers who had heard rumors of the encounter. "Thank you for coming," Bruce said, extending his hand with genuine respect. Louis shook it firmly, perhaps too firmly, as if trying to assert his strength from the very beginning. "No problem. I was curious to see what you could teach me," he replied condescendingly. Several of Bruce's students exchanged glances, but their teacher remained impassive, wearing the calm smile that never left his face. "Let's start with something simple," Bruce suggested. "I'd like you to try to hit me." Just one straight punch, with all your speed and power. I won't counterattack. I'll only move to evade it. Lewis let out a short, arrogant laugh. Are you sure? I don't want to hurt you in your own gym. Don't worry about me, Bruce replied, adopting a relaxed stance with his hands down, almost as if he were unprepared. The karate champion assumed his flawless fighting guard. Years of training had refined his technique into something devastating. When he threw a straight punch, the sound of air being sliced could be heard meters away. He had knocked men out with a single strike, using that technique. Lewis inhaled deeply, focusing. He wanted this punch to be memorable, to show everyone in the room the difference between a true champion and an overrated instructor. He tensed his muscles, visualized the perfect trajectory, and launched his fist with all the speed his years of training had given him. What happened in the next 2 seconds defied all logic for Joe Louis. His punch cut through the air at incredible speed, aimed directly at Bruce Lee's face. But when it should have landed, Bruce simply wasn't there. It wasn't a frantic or exaggerated movement. It was as if space itself had rearranged. Bruce's body slid laterally with impossible fluidity, and Lewis's fist passed through empty air where his target's face had been an instant before. But that wasn't the most unsettling part. In the same motion, while Lewis's punch continued its failed trajectory, Bruce had placed his open hand just 2 centimeters from the karate champion's throat. It wasn't a strike. It was a silent but unmistakable warning. If he had wanted to, the encounter could have ended right there. Lewis staggered back a step, eyes wide open, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. Again, Bruce said calmly, returning to his relaxed posture. Lewis's wounded pride turned into fierce determination. This time he wouldn't miss. He launched a combination, jab, straight, hook. 3 strikes in rapid succession, each powerful enough to finish an ordinary opponent. Bruce Lee moved like water flowing around rocks. Every strike met only air, and after each failed combination, Bruce's hand appeared at a vital point. The throat, the solar plexus, the jaw. He never made contact, but the message was crystal clear. Lewis was completely exposed. After 6 attempts, the karate champion was breathing heavily, not so much from physical exertion, but from frustration and disbelief. He had given everything, his best techniques, his most devastating speed, and he hadn't even managed to graze this man who seemed to dance between his blows. Do you want to know why you can't touch me? Bruce asked, without a trace of mockery in his voice. His tone was that of a true teacher, someone who wanted to educate, not humiliate. Lewis nodded silently, his pride shattered, but his mind opened for the first time in years. You're telegraphing every movement, Bruce explained, stepping closer. Your punches are powerful, yes, and fast, but you announce each one before throwing it. You tense your shoulder here, he said, gently touching Lewis's shoulder. You shift your weight here, pointing to his hips. And you adjust your gaze here, indicating his eyes. By the time your fist starts moving, I already know exactly where it's going. Bruce stepped back and continued. You've trained your body to be a perfect machine, but that perfection has become your limitation. Every movement follows a pattern, a fixed form. In traditional karate, that's a virtue, but in a real fight, it's a weakness that an experienced opponent can exploit. The gym fell silent. Everyone present knew they were witnessing more than a simple demonstration. They were seeing the moment when an undefeated champion realized he had been operating with an incomplete understanding of martial arts. Now, Bruce said with the same smile he'd worn throughout the encounter, let me show you something. Bruce stood in front of a heavy punching bag, weighing about 150 pounds. He positioned himself just 2 centimeters away from it. Then, without any visible preparatory movement, without pulling his arm back or obviously rotating his hips, he struck. The sound was like thunder in the enclosed space. The bag bent inward at the center, absorbing an impact that seemed impossible given the lack of wind-up. But the most impressive part was the speed. Lewis, who considered himself one of the fastest strikers in karate, had barely seen the movement. It was like a blink, a flash that defied perception. This is called the 1-inch punch, Bruce explained. It's not about brute muscle strength or pure speed. It's about efficient energy transfer, using the entire body as a coordinated unit, releasing power without prior tension that telegraphs your intent. Bruce spent the next 2 hours working with Joe Louis. It wasn't a traditional class. There was no humiliation, no ego. It was a genuine transmission of knowledge from one martial artist to another. Bruce showed him how every unnecessary movement was a missed opportunity, how economy of motion multiplied effectiveness, and how the rigidity of traditional forms could be both a strength and a prison. To his credit, Louis absorbed every lesson with the humility of a beginner. His ego had been dismantled, but in its place arose something far more valuable, a genuine hunger to learn and evolve. At the end of the session, as Louis prepared to leave, Bruce placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have extraordinary talent," he said sincerely. "Your speed and power are real. But now you know there are levels beyond what you imagined. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge?" Joe Louis looked Bruce Lee in the eyes and, for the first time in years, smiled with genuine humility. "I'm going to learn. If you'll accept me as a student, I want to train with you." That afternoon marked the beginning of one of the most fruitful teacher-student relationships in martial arts history. Joe Louis would become one of Bruce Lee's first private students, and under his guidance, he would evolve from a powerful fighter into one of the most complete and technically sophisticated champions of his era. Years later, long after Bruce Lee had become a global legend of cinema and martial arts, Joe Louis reflected on that day in an interview. "That day I learned the difference between being good and being great," he said. "I was good, maybe even excellent in my style, but Bruce was on a completely different level. It wasn't just his speed or technique. It was his deep understanding of the fundamental principles of combat. I realized I had been viewing martial arts through a tunnel, seeing only what my traditional training had shown me. Bruce taught me to open my eyes and see the whole picture." The story of Joe Louis and Bruce Lee became legendary in the martial arts community, not as a tale of humiliation or defeat, but as a testament to the power of humility and the willingness to learn. Louis never denied what happened that day. In fact, he openly shared it, becoming one of the strongest advocates of Bruce Lee's philosophy. The encounter revealed something fundamental about both men. Joe Louis showed that true strength does not lie in never failing, but in how one responds when their limitations are exposed. Bruce Lee demonstrated that true mastery doesn't need to humiliate in order to teach, that knowledge shared with respect and compassion is infinitely more powerful than any display of dominance. If this story inspired you and made you reflect on the importance of humility and lifelong learning, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that there's always something new to learn, no matter how experienced you are. Let me know in the comments what lesson you take away from this legendary encounter between two of the greatest martial artists of all time. See you in the next video with more incredible stories from the world of martial arts.